So you
We're here with
guys can just talk to Mark.
all right. We're here with Dave and Matt in the control room at Guilford Sound. Collectively, they are the brains and the muscle and the heart of this place.
Thank you.
Introduce yourselves.
I'm Dave Snyder.
I'm Matt Hall.
Owner.
Yeah, sorry,
Engineer.
owner of Guilford Sound. Matt is an engineer and just general assistant at the studio.
And for people who aren't familiar with Guilford Sound, it's how do you define a residential recording facility?
Yeah, it's a residential recording studio that has the equipment to be able to make a professional full-length record, and a housing facility to house 10 people all year round. And we also have a summer house that can house another 6 people. So the idea was to provide a place for city folk to come up, get away from everything, and just be able to hang out for days at a time. So
And provide them. I mean, the facility is, and the equipment is world class. I mean, amazing equipment.
yeah,
Kind of run through what you have to offer.
a lot. Yeah. The list is long.
Where do you want to start?
I mean, it really is. It's pretty extensive, and we have kind of everything for anybody, for the most part. I mean, there's some things we don't, like our plugins list isn't huge, but we make up for that with just an expansive vintage microphone collection, just really well maintained equipment, all the classic. Well, not all, but a lot of the classic compressors, a lot of new boutique equipment that's available now, and great vintage guitars, a big collection of vintage amps, new amps as well. But we have top of the line tape decks if you want to do stuff to tape, 64 inputs of Pro Tools in and out. Excellent converters, top of the line converters. So stuff just sounds awesome. It's really easy to just get a good sound. You just kind of put up a mic and there it is. It's pretty hard to screw it up. So.
Walking around the studio, it's a wonderland of the gorgeous and the bizarre.
Yeah. What do you mean by bizarre? Like what?
You're referring to me as gorgeous, right?
Him is bizarre.
Gear wise or
gear wise, I mean, you have a lot of the beautiful vintage amps. There's heads and there's combos and there's the guitars, and then I was wandering around and spotted this crazy Oberheim OB3 that I fell in love with.
Yeah. Yeah, we have an Ace Tone drum machine, goofy stuff too. We have a bunch of things like that. So,
but I don't imagine getting a lot of opportunity to pull that stuff off.
No, but we have like a real Hammond too, so Brendan's keeping it real, keeping it interesting.
Is that a B3 back there, M3?
It's a B3 and a 122 Leslie cabinet. So, and then or 121, I can't remember the model number. But the other thing I keep forgetting to mention about the studio is one of the great things about it is we were able to build it from the ground up. So there were a lot of details we could throw into it that wouldn't have otherwise been possible if it was in a pre-structured building. So we have an echo chamber in the attic that's suspended from the roof, basically, which you can send a vocal up there. Not the vocalist, but the signal up there through to a speaker, feed it to a speaker, and then send it back down to the room to add echo to things, just like an old reverb. Rather than reverb, it's an actual room that just is echoey. We also have a plate reverb, which is this long box with a piece of sheet metal in it that vibrates and creates echo that way.
The residential facility, I was able to get a good look at that too. Amazing.
Yeah. Thanks. That was Rob Porter Sheridan, an architectural firm in New York City, designed it, and
based off sketches that I drew on a napkin.
That's right.
Late at night, so don't give him all the credit.
Yeah, it was all Matt. We wanted something to just the history of that location is somewhat important. There's an old house there that dates back to 1793. And it's sort of a museum piece for historic preservation nuts. when we bought the property, we had just people cold calling us, telling us like, please don't knock that house down. The house was falling into the ground, and through neglect, it actually, and it wasn't even like conscious neglect, just through people not having the means to do, upkeep. It never had it has the original doors, the original hardware, hinges, fixtures. I mean, like a museum in there, And we were able to pull the plaster back on the wall, shore up the foundation, and get it, situated, just restore it basically, not reinvent it or modernize it. So we close it in the winter. It has no insulation. Anyway, long story short, that whole area there, the field where the new building is, I really wanted to respect the fact that this old house has been there for 250 years. And so we spent a lot of time citing where this new building was going to go. We wanted it close enough that if we had groups sharing the two buildings, they could be right there with each other and share meals and, hang out and whatever. But I didn't want it to just be this imposing monolith sticking out of the ground, So Ted had the idea, the architect had the idea of, well, let's, push it into the hillside, get it as low as possible, and develop the idea from there. So it's a passive solar design. It's got two envelopes that are completely independent of each other. So there's just thermal breaks everywhere. So for cold air to infiltrate the building takes literally days. If it's freezing cold and you didn't have any heat on in there, it would take days for the cold event to work its way in. So, a testament to it was last year we had an outage. One of the heat pumps that heats the main section of the building was out for 4 days, and the temperature dropped to 64 degrees in the main section in the building, and really just in the mornings, like it would gain the heat back through just the sun coming through the radiation from the sun coming through. So
that cool stuff notwithstanding, for clients, it's quiet and it's solid and it feels good.
Yeah, it does. I agree. It's really comfortable. It's very kind of the lines and everything are. It's very austere in its there's not a lot of what's the word
Frou-frou.
Yeah, frou-frou. Yeah, it's just it has lots of clean lines, and it's not very lived in yet, It's just we haven't like completely finished furnishing that area when you first walk in and everything. So there's a little bit of development that we still need to make it feel more comfortable. But the rooms themselves, each room that people stay in, are like, in my opinion, perfect. They're just little sanctuaries. You just go in there, you close the door. It's really quiet in there. You can't, the outdoors. If you want to listen to the outdoors, you can open the window, but it's when the window's closed, you can't hear anything. It's like really silent. So very comfortable. People remark when they stay there that they get a very solid night's sleep, and yeah.
You want to talk about some of the clients that you've had come through in these early days?
Yeah, in the early, we've had a lot of local things, from school choirs to singer-songwriters to rock bands like Carton, The place is still relatively new. I built it first before, really garnering. I had lots of people from New York. We, had a studio in New York, and I haven't been incredibly aggressive about getting those people to come up here. So just letting it grow organically. That said, probably the most notable person was Valerie June, who came in last year, who's an up and coming singer-songwriter from West Tennessee.
Is her hair real?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that beautiful, all those dreads. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real.
Beautiful hair. Yeah, she's incredible. Just sweet as pie and just really easy to work with. And she had just a super group. So we did a lot of live tracking with them, more isolation than we're doing today, but spending a lot of time. Matt Marinelli was the engineer. He's a phenomenal engineer and just kind of does a lot of different things. He's an expert in many areas of life. And he engineered it, and he also played on it. And so they would just play tunes together in the live room. Did they have, when Andy was playing guitar in there, did they have the amp in the room, or did they isolate the amp?
We just play around as there was one song where we decided that no one was going to wear headphones, and that's like kind of where I got the idea for the Super 6, because they they pumped her vocals through that like over in the corner of the room, and it just sounded really cool. So
Yeah, to give her
instead of having like, used it as a monitor wedge, so no one had to wear headphones, and it was great.
Yeah, it's really fun when you don't have to wear headphones.
So that kind of rolls it into what's been going on here the last couple of days, where there are 4 bands from the Doth Life musician collective up in Windsor. You guys are doing them.
Yeah, it's great.
Why?
I just fell in love with Carden, and they're just their ethos. They're really into, they're fans of music, and I'm a fan of music first. It'd be great to rent the studio out 365 days a year, but I'm much more interested in providing the studio and interacting with people I enjoy, music I enjoy, and I'm comfortable. I like the music that comes out of there, so I invited them to come.
It's a rare thing. It's the first time you've done this.
Yeah, it is. It's something I've thought of for years. I've always wanted to do, live in studio recording, and we're flying by the seat of our pants. I mean, I don't really know. I'm making a lot of informed guesses of how to go about it. I have plenty of experience putting mics in front of things and recording things and making it sound good, each instrument on its own, or isolating things. But when it comes to just putting all of the soup in one room and trying to make it work, it's challenging, and there are compromises. There's definitely phase issues and bleed issues, and it'll be fun to sort of sort it out. But what you gain from what you gain out of losing sonic clarity, what you gain is just tons of vibe, where the band is so psyched to play together. They play better together. It feels more like a rehearsal space than a studio. It's so common for people to come in, put headphones on, they go, well, I guess I can hear okay, and then you go out and you listen to what they're listening to in their headphones, and you just go, man, this is such a bummer. Like, yeah. You're hearing crap, and then they come in here and they go, oh, that's what it sounds like. Oh, okay, So like, while they're playing the music, they're not being musical. They're thinking about, who knows what they're thinking about. They're just like, oh, I'm in this big studio, this, or if something's, they just, it's easy to get out of the music when you go into like studio mode. And the goal, in my opinion, is to make musicians feel musical. It's like really important for people to plug in their instruments and just feel super comfortable. So, and I come from a musical background. I was a drummer in a band and a bunch of bands, and we did a bunch of recordings, and I've had great experiences and bad experiences in studios where, engineers impose their will on the band, and it just really kills the vibe,
Why are you pointing at me? Say I'm not a vibe cultivator.
One of the bands that recorded yesterday, the one that, the vocals were fed through that Fender 6, you got their vibe and amplified their vibe.
Yeah. Well, it was like music that I feel super comfortable working in, and like different setups lend themselves to, like this setup was tailor-made for sparsely arranged music like they were playing. So it was able to function at a higher capacity, because there's more space between everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So like that's another, it was a good lesson.
Now it was cool watching Matt, like, we're tracking him going, oh, this sounds so great. This is really great. I like these songs and everything. And then Matt just came like floating in the room. He's just like, this is incredible. It just really, really got him. So that was pretty fun.
There's the live music beast, and there's the studio beast. And this is a marriage of two really different things that you're trying to do here.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's easy to trick yourself into thinking you have to go into studio mode and like put on headphones and like make a click track. But sometimes that just ruins everything if you're not an experienced player, or the music needs to like go forward and needs to, like the Oceanas, right? They were doing demos with someone else, like all isolated, and it sounded like two songs playing at the same time, when you were listening to it. But when they played all together, it was amazing. It was totally cohesive. So
Yeah, and they kind of looked at us
Like, wait a minute, you want us to all
yeah,
play in the same room?
we're all going to play in the same room, yeah, at the same time, like the instruments too, everything. Yeah, yeah. Let's just try that first, see if we can get it to sound sonically clear, and it's I think people really respond to that, and it's something that's been not lost, but in my world, at least in the rock world, it's been really common. I came up with people doing a lot of that where they just throw a click track on. This song's 135 and play the beat. I'll play a scratch guitar behind it, but it just wouldn't be inspiring. And then we take that drum thing and just put everything on top of it, and then try to make it into something. And it would take a lot of time, and some of the results would be outstanding.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But it's really, I just think it's a lot more fun to just bang stuff out quickly.
And it can be like an objective safety blanket when you're engineering, if you're using a click track and you've edited everything to be on the grid and it's perfect. You can say, it's not my fault, like everything's, so it's hard to, sometimes that's like an interesting thing, it's like, how sloppy can it be? Like, how sloppy should it be? How, that's like the magic in it, is when it feels like it was played by human beings, opposed to when you just like edited it all together and then hit play and it's like this really slick thing. That's less impressive to me than like the natural push and pull of something that was recorded all at once,
A studio guy from 40 years ago, 50 years ago, if he transported into this conversation, he wouldn't know what you were talking about.
Yeah, it's true.
No, I think you would, right?
No, they, when you think of like the Beatles, if you look at it, I mean, when they did experimentation, it was they were still laying down basic tracks for most of the stuff, I mean, until Sgt. Pepper's, then they really started experimenting. But
Pepper was 8 tracks.
Yeah.
The gatekeepers were a lot more stringent at that point too. Like, before the Beatles, I mean, they got rejected by every single other record company, like in England, right?
I don't know.
But
take your word for it.
Yeah, take my word for that. It's true. But to get to the point where they could even be considered, they had to have played like thousands of live shows and be like one of the tightest live performers. So I feel like that you can start recording now before you even assemble your band, and that's like can be symptomatic, of something that isn't necessarily gonna work to your advantage.
Before the indulgency of the 70s, the bands would rehearse, they would have it together, they'd go into the studio for a few hours and knock it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great approach. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And then like they would spend all that time figuring stuff out, like playing shows, and saying like, oh, this part of the song doesn't work, like your tone is too loud here.
Yeah, it's know how to self-balance and listen to each other. Yeah.
So both approaches have validity.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. You can be a creative genius, who without like the technical ability or musical technical ability to do what you're trying to do, and like sit in your bedroom with a laptop and make something that's absolutely incredible. I
think Tame Impala is a great example of that.
Yeah.
Like the first couple records were just all in his bedroom and, adding layers and just messing with it until it sounded really cool.
And you could be.
And his live stuff is he can play live and pull it off now. But when he first started, it was not that. It was just layer. He became who he is because of this technology that was available. Cheap technology, all this stuff, all of this capability on a little laptop. To be able to just experiment for
hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Yeah, yeah. And he came up with something really cool.
Yeah, and it's like a lesson I learned coming from my bedroom, growing up with computers and stuff, like, is that you can get to maybe like 85% of the sound quality of like a major studio, which if you're doing everything right at your house, but the converters in your interface will eventually let you down. And then that last 15%, truthfully, it doesn't even matter if like the material you're playing is good enough. You know what I mean? But if it's like when you hit the magic zone is when you get to use that last 15% of quality and you're playing really interesting material. That's when like you're making
the magic
a recording that, is timeless or whatever, has a quality to it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff I like that is multi-tracked and isolated. Like I'm a big fan of Sebadoh. I love Sebadoh, and that's all. I mean, like the later records like Harmacy and Doth Sebadoh, and or I forget Bake Sale. I mean, those were done in a proper studio, I think. With overdubs and so there's some of that. I think one you don't necessarily have to screw it up with some crazy mic or crappy things. You can also just it's more about not it's having the ability to have everybody play at the same time, and having a cohesive element that pulls it all together, as opposed to having all of your pristine individual elements. So you have something that pulls it together, like room mics, or where you rely heavily on the sound of the room. You get it sounding really good in the room, even if stuff is isolated. You get the drums to sound really good. Sometimes we'll pump stuff back into the room. We'll take, if the amp is isolated and close mic'd for clarity, we'll then re-amp the performance in the live room and just use it as like a reverb return, and and then mix that in. So a lot of it is just doing that to it.
So when a person books a studio like this studio in particular, they're reaching for the next level, for clarity, for equipment, for selection, and getting a bunch of experience that they can avail themselves of. What else?
Well, if you take one back from that and take the experience out of it and just look at the gear, there's one element is just to be a rental facility, where we're all things to whoever wants to use, however they want to approach recording, we can do almost all of that here. So, and that's the bread and butter. People come in, rent the place out, generate some revenue through renting the studio out to people who bring in their own engineers, bring their own producers. I don't have anything to do with it. It's artistically or aesthetically not even necessarily anything that speaks to me. It doesn't matter. Producer who's looking for a room with his own engineer, and he doesn't really care what I've done or what I can do. They just want to make sure everything works, and they can come in here and rent the place out. So
usually, like, if it's a situation like we were just talking about, I'll usually be here like all the time, helping the engineer, whoever's the guy, like hooking everything up, showing him where stuff is. If there's a problem, we'll switch doing that kind of stuff. So
yeah, just being a facilitator.
It's really fun. And that's like, recording engineers are like a pretty wily bunch of human beings, and we all have like fairly strong opinions about how things work, and some of it's like pseudoscience, and it's fun to like go through all that stuff. And some things I've honestly been like, this is a crazy idea, have worked, and other things don't, so it's really fun to like go into someone else's universe and like see.
The one thing, when we do wear that hat of being the service provider, I don't care what you want to do.
I will do anything you want.
Big smile on our face. We don't question. It's like, great. You want to try that? We're going to make that happen, and then you can decide whether it's cool or not. It's just get the attitude out of it, and people really, really respond well to that.
Yeah.
People don't want to be told, even if you're right. It doesn't. Who cares? If you're right,
it's not. It's not helpful to say like that's a bad idea.
And it's a service industry. When you're renting the room out, you're renting it to, and they're the boss. So it's okay to have internal strong opinions about what I want to do and how I want to approach something. But when a client comes in here who wants to set up whatever they want to set up, we do it as best as possible and
as fast as possible,
with a big smile on our face,
as neatly. So,
and if somebody comes in and it's their first time in the studio, they're not bringing an engineer, they're not bringing a producer. You try to provide direction for them.
Oh yeah. Well, I actually, one person I admire tremendously in the engineering world is Steve Albini. He's really passionate about not being a producer. And he goes in with the assumption, to a fault in my opinion, but with the assumption of like, if a band's coming in to record, they have worked out all the kinks and they know what they want. And yeah, that's true a lot of times. But sometimes people come in and they're just like, I don't know the hell I'm doing or how I sound, and can you please give me some feedback? So I make real damn sure, make sure it's super clear that they want my opinion. And when it's usually it's the opinion for me is something in tune? Are you playing in time with other people in the band? Is your message getting across? And if like you're poor playing, or you're not fretting well, or bending everything out of tune every time you play is getting in the way of the song moving forward, then I will point that out and try to correct it as best as possible without just totally killing the flow. If somebody comes in and they're just not going to learn how to play the guitar any better in the next 5 hours, then we just go with it. But I'm not a believer in being a producer and being like, this is how it's got to be done. You got to stop playing that, never play that fill. Don't, I will suggest things, or, if most of the time, if asked, but if somebody says, hey, will you produce my record? I want you to sit in on rehearsals and, really give some feedback. Great. I'll do that. But at the end of the day, people, when they're performing the thing, have to feel really psyched about what they're doing. And if you've just beaten them down to play it a certain way because you think it's going to sound better, it may even sound better, but their spirit is just going to be crushed. And that just doesn't serve anybody, So it's really fun to work with people and get them excited to, when that does happen. We've had a couple of experiences like that where we've been in the producer role more than the just the engineering role, But I really tread lightly, because I'm not one of the band members. Why would I know? You guys have been sitting with this stuff for years sometimes, with songs. You have an idea of how you want it to go, and I really respect that, And I've been on the other side when somebody's said things that
crushed your soul.
Yeah, or just kill the vibe, where the band we're completely out of the, we're second guessing everything, should the song be in 4/4? Just like basic shit is just, you're questioning everything, maybe I shouldn't even play drums, So does that answer your question? What was the question? I don't even remember.
I don't know.
Is there something that should be said that you do want people to know, or to hear, or to convey?
That this is the guy. Like, if you need something recorded, this is the guy to record it.
Hey, wow.
And that's what you should know.
That's okay.
I'm just alright. It's an adequate description.
The fact that I was able to do something on this scale makes me feel just incredible gratitude. I mean, genuine gratitude. I wake up going, this is awesome that I was able to do this, and I really want to share it. So we have a very precipitously slippery sliding scale for clients. We expect people to be super honest about what they can and can't afford, and that's, so we're okay getting approached by bands saying, look, we cobbled together this money, what can we do with this?
How much time can we
get with this? If Neil Young wanted to come here for 6 months and lock it out, I would be ecstatic. It would be great,
Bjork.
Or Bjork. I'm gonna just quickly sip my coffee.
32 gigs.
Quiet.
I'm camera shy, man. I really don't have a lot to say. Plus, Dave's doing a good job.
Sit there and look sexy.
I don't know anything about the, I was like, there's tape between all the seams in the buildings. Like, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be all blacked out anyway, so.
It'll just be your elbow.
Yeah.
It'll just be one shot.
I feel like I should be like doing it in pantomime. Like, I should be wearing a mask, just reacting.
Translate for it.
So great. You're just stuck in this box.
Oh man, if I knew American Sign Language, I would totally be over here like.
You just make it up, man.
No, that's really offensive.
You end up saying really offensive stuff.
God, this is a sexy picture. Jesus.
Oh, cool. Let me see.
I like the light. Like 17-foot tall reservoir tip Carhartt hat.
Reservoir tip.
I look like the hood Abe Lincoln.
I didn't realize you sported a different hat today.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's because I saw a picture of how big the top of that other one was. I was like, I got to do something about this.
Reservoir tip. What the?